Boys, it looks like hope is back on the menu at Rogers Arena. Hello, Canucks fans. Welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, brought to you by Bet365. Check out Bet365's $3 early payout. When your team goes up 3, you get paid. It's that simple. Download the app today. Must be 19 plus. Please play responsibly. My name is Dave Quadrelli. I am joined by Harman Dial. I am here at the Wall Center. Harman raced home. We both raced from our respective recording locations. Of course, we were at Rogers Arena covering the press conference that we're going to dive into right now. Harm, I'm putting you on the spot here. All right. We haven't talked about this. We don't do a show plan ever. One word to describe today's press conference as Daniel and Henrik Sedin unveiled as co-presidents of hockey operations and Ryan Johnson as the Canucks' next general manager.
Poised. I think that's one way of putting it. Not sure if it's the best word necessarily to describe what we heard from that press conference, but I think any incoming regime, step one with Canucks fans in an opening press conference is don't step on a landmine. Don't say something that immediately makes reporters and fans shake their head and lose confidence in the direction that you're going toward. And I think over the last 2 or 3 years, there have been a number of instances when management has come up to the podium to speak. Like you even go back to when Alvin was on that Amazon broadcast, or I think it was either Alvin or Rutherford on After Hours, and the whole and how messy the messaging was, and the kind of retool it discussion, and it just shot a lot of the confidence that the market had in the last management regime. So I think step one, which they nailed, was they didn't say anything in that press conference that made me go, ooh, that sounds concerning to me. There was no sign of they're looking to hurry out of this rebuild, right? And I like that Ryan Johnson specifically mentioned, we're not putting a timeline on this. It'd be unfair. And I think that is so critical because they're in the really early stages, and to try and say, oh, we're going to be playoff competitive, even if you say in 3 to 4 years, who knows, right? It takes a long time to rebuild, and especially some of the messaging around building through the draft and things of that nature. It was a very poised press conference.
Very poised, very hopeful. Hopeful is my word, is hope. Hope is the word that I'm going to pick. Lots of people in the chat right now, lots of reaction coming in. So if you want to make sure your question or comment gets on the show, hit us with a super chat on YouTube here. Proceeds from our super chat go to the BC Mental Health Foundation, changing the face of mental health and addiction by spreading breakthroughs in care, public understanding, research, and knowledge exchange. Flying Cobra Chicken, awesome screen name, in the chat said, it sounds like a great mindset from RJ. We're going to dive into all that and so much more. And we've got our first super chat. This one from Elfrin, regular listener of the show and attendee of our watch parties. He said, one takeaway, nothing in a hybrid form from them. Like you said, Harm, don't step on a landmine. Those three gentlemen did not do that today. We're going to start with Francesco Aquilini, who did a prepared statement in front of media, did not take questions, and the Canucks spokesperson that explained the decision said, this day is about RJ and the Sedins, understand that thinking. But also, it was interesting that same spokesperson threw in at the end, like, you guys will talk to him sooner rather than later. So we'll see, whatever that means. The last time Francesco Aquilini took questions from media was when they extended Jim Rutherford, which was 2 years ago now, 3 years. How long's it been? Well, it doesn't matter. Anyways, been a while. Apparently, we'll hear from Francesco sooner rather than later. Maybe that's our Bet365 bet of the day. Hey, Harm? Maybe.
I wouldn't be getting my hopes up about hearing from Francesco soon.
We'll see. Another super chat. I want to get to the clips, but we got to start with the super chats. This one from Nick Pocek. Now that Harm, $5 super chat, donation to the BC Mental Health Foundation. Now that Harm is a big-time YouTuber with tens of thousands of views on his videos, will he remember us little people? Congrats on the great debut vid. Jacob, do I have a clap button here on my little roadcaster in this studio? I want an applause.
You don't, but I do. Give me 1 second. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, as seen on YouTube, Harman Dial, over 30,000 views, probably over 40 by now. Phenomenal first video. We talked about it yesterday. I said it was great. I'm not taking credit, but that video had like 1,000 views when I plugged it and then took off. So You're welcome. I'll accept some royalties, but congrats, Harm. Huge, awesome first video.
Thanks. It honestly blew my expectations. I went in and thought, first video, if I get 1,000 views, this will be great. And it took off, and I saw familiar faces in the comment section from our live YouTube chat. So it was great to hear from a lot of the Canucks Conversation listeners, and that support means a lot because now I can keep making those videos. But don't worry, I'm not going anywhere from Canucks Conversation. And there's a reason that when I shoot these videos, the Canucks Army framed picture is still up there too.
That's sweet. But your price did just go up. You don't have to lie. It's all good. All right. Another super chat, and then we'll get to some clips. We're cutting the super chats. You can get them in. Get your super chats in. We'll read them during anyone else. This one is from Walk, another regular listener of the show. It's for $6.99. He said, happy that RJ said they want to acquire future picks, trade every single veteran possible, hire Manny, and we move. Okay, so there's a big important comma in there. He's happy that RJ said they want to acquire future picks. He did not say that they're going to trade every single veteran. He also did not say they're going to hire Manny Malhotra. But that is what Walk is saying he hopes the organization does next. So we will talk about that and so much more. Let's get into our clips from today's press conference. Our next segment of the show is brought to you by our friends over at Greta. The playoffs are still on, and Greta is a great spot to go watch some playoff action. The Blue Jays as well, whatever it is you want to watch, Greta's got it on one of their beautiful big screens. You've got the arcade, you've got the bar, you've got the street food menu. Greta's a great spot. Make it your spot to watch the game of your choosing. 50 West Cordova Street is the address. Let the games begin. All right, so like I said, prepared statement from Canucks owner Francesco Aquilini. Jacob, technical producer Jacob Lazar in the background there. Jacob, if you can if you can give us the Francesco clip, specifically the one on rebuilding to a championship caliber team, because he opened by thanking Jim Rutherford, thanking Patrick Allvin, but we've got a lot of clips to get to today. We're going to skip that one. He thanked Rutherford, thanked Allvin, thanked the fan base as well. And then this is the part that stood out to me.
First, I want to say thank you to Jim Rutherford, who answered the call.
Not quite.
Sorry, that's the wrong one.
It's okay. Yeah. You got
it. Give me a second.
Take your time. You're good. Yeah. You're good.
But before we even get into some of the specific clips, and I know I'm jumping slightly ahead, but the opening statement that the Sedins and Ryan Johnson had, are we going to play the clip from it?
Probably not the opening statement, so let's dive into it.
But that was so cool, by the way. You had the Sedins and like both of them with their cue cards in front. And like Daniel would say a couple sentences, then Henrik would say a couple. It was perfectly synchronized, right? In classic Sedin-like fashion. It was almost like I listen to a lot of rap music, and some of the most satisfying rap songs are when you have two artists collaborating and they go bar for bar, which is hard to do skill wise. It was almost like that, watching them just like couple lines, pass it off so seamlessly. And then I think one of the big takeaways after was RJ, the aura to not have any cue cards or any notes, just speaking off the top of his head. And I think that's part of RJ's identity is
aura farming.
No, he is such a skilled communicator, and there's a degree of authenticity when he speaks where, okay, he's maybe going to give some diplomatic answers to some specific questions, and we certainly heard those throughout the press conference, but there's a level of confidence that he has up at the podium with the media in speaking directly to the fans, in fielding the tough questions. He doesn't get nervous in that spotlight. And I think him not needing a statement in front of him, nervously going through line by line and just, I can handle this off the dome and I'm going to communicate my message in a really poised, graceful manner, speaks to, I think, him being able to handle the spotlight of being the GM in this market well, especially because you may not always get the most detailed answers from RJ, right? He's not going to come out with headline-worthy statements, and that's fine. But the key is, in all my time covering RJ, talking to him, interviewing him, I've never gotten the sense that he's BSing me with answers.
Yep.
And that's not a trait that you always get from executives. Certainly Jim Rutherford was a straight shooter. He wouldn't BS you. But with Patrick Allvin, I almost couldn't always trust his word up at the podium. Like I can think back to the summer they bought OEL out, but a month before, Patrick Allvin publicly says we're not buying out OEL, and then they end up buying out OEL. Right from that point, I can't take your word seriously. I don't think we're gonna have any of those concerns with RJ.
And quickly on that, everybody gets so hung up on you're talking to the media, you're dealing with the media. What do you think OEL thought after Patrick Allvin came out and said, no, we're not going to buy OEL out, and then they bought him out anyway? Like, he probably thought he wasn't getting bought out. He bought a house in Vancouver. Not after that. I think it was before that, but he had a house in Vancouver. He didn't think he was leaving, that's for sure, and they went against their word. And that's the point that I'm trying to make, is it matters how you treat people. The Sedins have always been known as guys who treat people the right way. And yeah, you're right, Jim Rutherford, straight shooter. There's some questionable decisions about how he treated people over his time in Vancouver. Let's not look too much into the past, though. Let's get to it. Jacob's now got it, I think. Fingers crossed, Jacob.
Yes, I've got it.
All right. The clip that I wanted to highlight from Francesco Aquilini's opening statement.
To be better, need to be better, and we will be better. We are 100% committed to rebuilding the roster into a championship caliber team. We're excited about our young players, our future picks we will add, including the 3rd pick overall in this year's draft. Every expert agrees that we'll get a terrific player with this selection.
Daily Faceoff reader confirmed, first of all. But second, can I use you a quick hot take before we get to the meat of what he just said?
Sure.
He's a better public speaker than I think he thinks. Like, we always hear this, he won't speak to the media, he won't come out and speak because he's such a bad public speaker. He's not that bad of a public speaker. You look at your notes, you look up, there's a lot of people that when you tell them to go public speak, they're just reading off a paper and they can't look up. He's looking up, he's doing, he's darting around the room, he's looking at different viewpoints. That's at least like an intermediate level of public speaking. So anyway, that's a hot take.
I don't think he's sure, but reading a prepared statement is a lot different than a lot of the targeted questions that I think he would get from the media.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, let's
prepare for those.
Let's move on. Let's move on. What did you think of what he just said? Because that's the part that stands out to me is, again, we're going to rebuild this to a championship caliber team.
He's saying the right things, but I'll believe it when I see it. And this is where we're not even going to get an answer on that within the next 2 or 3 years even. Like, honestly, the critical mistake rebuilding teams make isn't in year 1. It's not at the start of a rebuild. It's year 3, 4, 5, when you see that first glimmer of hope, when you start to have some of your top picks that you drafted within the top 5 or top 10. Some of those guys are entering the organization. You have them contending for Calder trophies, and you get the sense that, oh, this guy could be a number 1 defenseman for us. This guy's going to be a future first liner. And you get too ahead of yourself and you think, all right, let's accelerate it. That's the mistake the Kings made. That's the mistake the Rangers made. Countless other organizations have made that mistake. Hell, this one, right? It was, you get Quinn Hughes, you get Elias Pettersson, you get Brock Besser, three straight sensational rookies. And then it's, okay, you're trading your picks away, you're signing bad free agent contracts. You're not going to get a sense of just how committed they actually are to sticking through this process until year 3 and 4, when the guy who's drafted 3rd overall, for example, looks like a future stud. It's when you get that glimmer that I still have that question mark of, is ownership actually going to be able to resist, trust in the process, and let management slow play it?
Absolutely. And the fact of the matter is, even RJ and Daniel and Henrik Sedin, they said the right things as well, but this organization as a whole has lost the benefit of the doubt, and it's on them to regain it. Like, let's call a spade a spade. They've lost the benefit of the doubt that everyone can just take them at their word, well, especially when it comes to stuff like this. So yeah, you're going to have to see it. You're going to have to see it to believe it. But we've also heard the wrong things a lot of time from this owner and from whoever's sitting in the chairs that those gentlemen were sitting in today. Did you have anything else from Francesco you wanted to get to? Because I want to kind of dive in now as we shift to the Sedins portion of this.
No, let's get to the Sedins.
Okay. Important to note, both Francesco and the Sedins said that it was the Sedins that made the final pick on Ryan Johnson Sedin's even named Evan Gold. They weren't afraid to do that. I believe it was Daniel that said it was between Evan and RJ, and that they spent an entire day with Evan and they spent an entire day with RJ, and they landed on Ryan Johnson as the GM. So important to note that as well. Okay, Jacob, next clip here. Daniel talking about how it's a strength that they've been in all parts of the organization. Again, these guys, they've played for the team. They've worked on the advisory side in management. They've worked for multiple regimes, right? We don't have this one, Jacob said.
No, this was the one of your list. This is the one we didn't get.
I quoted it on Twitter, so I'll read you the quote.
Yes, thank you.
Off to a flying start here. It's not Jacob's fault. It's Jacob and I talked about this, so this one's on me. This was the quote. All right. I didn't write this one down. Wow, just awful that we aren't prepared for this. My bad. But I did write it in my notes. He talked about how it's a strength that they've been in all parts of the organization, and it's hard to disagree with that.
Yeah, and I think because they've spent the last 2 or 3 years specifically in on player development and spending a lot of time on the ice, we've come to it was a good reminder for me as well that before they decided to get into player development, they spent time with every department of the organization, and they specifically mentioned scouting as well, to figure out where exactly do they want to work? Where exactly do they want to leave their fingerprints on this organization? They ultimately chose player development, but before that, they got a behind the scenes look at how this organization operated in all these different departments. And they also specifically mentioned that they have ideas around how some of those things could be improved, optimized. And I think that's important when it comes to taking that next step, because if it was just a pure player development background, that's amazing. And certainly that's one of the most important departments for a rebuilding team. But also, you look at the landscape of how prospects are developed in today's NHL. It's different because a lot of guys are just going through the NCAA rather than junior hockey. And so some of your prospects will spend time at the American League level, but a lot of them are either developing overseas in Europe and they come over and they immediately make the NHL, or they go through college, kind of like the Quinn Hughes route, and then they, again, immediately make the NHL. So it's good that they have insight and experience on the other departments of the organization as well, because that is going to be important.
And you worried about relationships at all? Because you shouldn't be. You just talked about it. Guys are all over the place. You remember Braden Coots casually dropping that he has weekly calls with the Sedins to go over his tape in the dub? And, well, maybe not weekly, but he talked about how he's always in contact with them and he talks to them a lot and how they've been a great resource for him. This is the other thing. We don't have player reaction because everyone's off for the off season, and maybe we'll I'm sure we'll text a couple players, but I'd be stunned if there's any player today that sees the announcement and isn't feeling the same level of hope, the same level of confidence, recognizing the poise that you just talked about off the hop as well. Like this is a move today that you have to think the players are going to feel pretty good about.
Absolutely. And RJ also, I think he looked good when he said that the fans, the ownership, and everyone deserved the organization conducting that wide search, right? He said, other people asked me how I felt about the fact that the organization didn't just immediately appoint Ryan Johnson, the general manager, once Patrick Allvin was gassed, that they went really deep in the process of interviewing a lot of people outside the organization. I think that was a good look on him as well. And then I think my biggest takeaway from this press conference as a whole, and it's not a surprise really, is I do have confidence that the culture of this organization is going to be reshaped in a positive direction. Yes. Not just because of the Sedins, but also because of how effectively RJ cultivates relationships and the way that he specifically spoke about wanting to create an environment where everybody within the front office, the coaching staff, and the players understand that this isn't about making me look good, right? Your performance isn't about making me look good. It's I have your best interests at heart too, and I want you to succeed. And I think that's important for trust in relationships. I think when you hear the Abbotsford players speak about RJ, that shines through as well. It's not just RJ speaking one thing and then acting another way behind closed doors. He genuinely backs that up with his actions. And I think that's critical for this organization.
Walk said, well, I think there's one player specifically who might be worried. We'll talk about Elias Pettersson. We'll talk about him later because all three of these guys gave their thoughts on Elias Pettersson. I don't think, like, I personally disagree with Walk. And if Elias Pettersson is sitting at home and hearing more stuff about preparation and how all they want is for him to have a clean slate and to come in the best shape of his life in September, if that's making him worried, then you got to ship him out of town. And I think that's ultimately what the decision that these guys are going to have to make is. They're saying clean slate for Elias Pettersson. We'll talk about that a little bit later. All right, Jacob, this next clip, and we definitely have this one because I've triple checked. Henrik Sedin, you talk about the culture harm. Henrik Sedin talks about how you can't win without a culture.
There's gonna, and Ryan is a big part of that too. There's got to be, we got to show up every day and lead by example. Culture is huge. You cannot win without it. That's impossible, and you cannot be sustainable without it. I think you'll see when this moves on and there's a process to everything, and you build something good. You will win a lot of the trades you make, and you will bring in free agents that are overperforming that where they maybe you expect. So for us, the culture piece is our main thing to fall back on over the next little bit. And that's starting with us. We got to come in every day, and we got to show up, and we got to do the things that took us to this position. And that's same as players, preparation, and that gives us confidence that we can step into this role. Is that we are prepared, and we're going to do everything it takes to do this job well. And I think it has a trickle down effect when if we can show that.
You know how we talk about, great captains like Sidney Crosby, like they set the standard. Like you're not going to prepare less or leave the ice earlier or leave the gym earlier than Sidney Crosby. When you see your captain, your highest paid guy in a lot of years, when you see that guy putting in the work, you're going to follow suit. And that's what helps build a good culture. This might be the first of all, I think it's the first co-presidents that I can think of in NHL history. Jacob, look that up for anyone else. But this might be the first management regime where the players like, is that the president of hockey ops hitting 310 on the bench there? Is that him? Like, how high is his heart rate right now? And how long's he been on that treadmill for? Holy cow, I got to step it up. What do you mean the president of hockey operations are going to race us up the gross grind to see who's in the best shape and who's not? Like, what are you talking about? This doesn't happen. This, and I'm joking a little bit, but when he talks about how they have to show up and they have to be the ones prepared, obviously he's not just talking about fitness. He might not even be talking about fitness at all, but he is talking about how they're going to give this their all, and they're going to make that clear to everyone from top to bottom of that organization.
For sure. And they've proven that since day one with their commitment. This isn't a case where they've been bystanders on the side in some glorified senior advisor role where in reality they're not actually in the mud with the team. Since they took on roles with this organization in 2021, they've been in the mud. They've done the day-to-day grind. They've done all the trips to Abbotsford back and forth, and they don't have to do that. When you're a star player coming back to work for your franchise and you're not in some big title role, there's zero expectation for you to spend time working on the Abbotsford power play, to spend time with Archdeep Baines one-on-one to help him become the best version of himself. You could so easily treat this as a cushy job, extra paycheck. You're in here and there, but you're mostly hands off. But we saw firsthand how involved they were, how committed they were. I think that's so critical. The fact that they did all of that before they even took the title, and now that they have the responsibility of being the head of hockey operations and directly reporting to ownership, you know that that's only going to be ratcheted up to that next level because they know how much is on them. And I also think they have an understanding of what this team means to the city and this fan base. They referenced that a couple of times, and that really struck me. The gap between 2018 when they retired and 2021 when they actually joined the organization, they spoke about, well, we were fans for 3 years following this team. And they also mentioned having an understanding of what this fan base wants to see from this team and this vision moving forward. So all of that does give you hope.
Okay, few things here. And on that note, Harm, super chat from Adventure Made in the chat, $10 super chat, said, haven't felt this hopeful about this team since the 2024 deadline. Awesome hires. On a side note, Harm should listen to Gods by Lil Peep and Lil Tracy if you're a fan of Bar for Bar. Do you know those people?
I know Lil Peep. I've never actually listened to his music. I don't know the second artist though.
Okay, well,
but I appreciate the recommendation.
Write it down. Okay, few people chiming in. Quinn Hughes eliminated last night. Colorado Avalanche, Quinn Hughes, despite playing in the Canadian market, stole that from Wyatt, but despite playing in the Canadian market, winning a gold medal, doing all these great things Quinn Hughes has done, they blow a 3-0 lead and they're eliminated by the Colorado Avalanche. Hey, on a totally unrelated note, Henrik talked about lack of community involvement from this last group, this current Canucks group.
Extremely well done, dude.
Very unrelated note. Very, very unrelated note. Here's Henrik Sedin talking about how the Canucks need to get back to being at the top of the league in community involvement.
Who wants to take this one, but do you think that player involvement in the community has dipped over the last few seasons, and does that have to become more of a priority with the organization again?
I mean, just looking back 26 years ago, when we flew into the city, Brian Burke told us that this was the number one organization in the league when it comes to community involvement, and we need to get to that point. We should be the number one organization in the NHL when it comes to community involvement, and we're going to ask our players to do a lot. I think it's so important for us as players when we did those things. I think it puts perspective in life. I think fans will respect that. You might have a bad game here and there, but if you're out, you do the work in the community. I think they can certainly buy into what we're trying to be. That's a big part of the connected piece as well. We got to bring that back and show I mean, just to have the people in the city and this province to be proud of, to be proud to be a Canucks fans again, and that's part of it.
What did you just say at the end there, Harm? We want people to be proud to be Canucks fans again. Listen to this comment. This was from Nick Pocek, who said, I loved the bit about prioritizing community involvement. And then he said, unlike our former captain, it was, I made a joke, obviously. It wasn't just Quinn Hughes. It was before Quinn Hughes. Quinn Hughes came up in an environment where that was not as much of a priority. And to I don't even want to say to their credit, but it is an important part of the story as well, that COVID really killed a lot of what was left of the Sedin culture. Because Bo Horvat tried. Bo Horvat tried, absolutely, right? Bo Horvat absolutely tried when he was still captain. But COVID did put a stop to a lot of those things. And basically what I think the problem was that there was nobody ever there to kind of restart those efforts. And again, regulations got eased out here. Don't want to make this whole conversation about COVID, but I will say at least that absolutely hurt things. As did losing Chris Tanev, as did losing Jacob Markstrom. So it's not just COVID's fault that this team has lost so much of that. But obviously the Sedins are mentioning that and they're talking about it. And look, this is another comment as well. It was from Wallach, who said, prioritizing community involvement to make people proud to be fans again is such a good statement. Also, that was Daniel Sedin talking at first, not Henrik Sedin. Both of them did talk in that clip. But what did you make of that, Harm?
I loved hearing it. We've heard whispers behind the scenes over the last few years about not a lot of involvement in that capacity. And I think it's like two things. Number one, I think they're bang on in recognizing that the players get perspective, life perspective, through some of these initiatives as well, where, okay, you have a bad game and you're so down about yourself. And I think we as humans in general have this tendency is we focus so much on ourselves and our problems that we don't realize how much worse and how much more adversity other people face. And when you get to meet some of those people, like you make hospital visits and you see how strong and courageous they are, and the spirit that they have despite all the obstacles they're facing, I think you gain a lot from that. And players who do a lot of community involvement, they speak about that, where it's not just I'm doing something for the community, but I'm actually getting something out of this as well. So that's important. And then secondly, I just think it's also a sign of how much you actually buy into this city and organization. I don't think any fan base wants to have the sense that the players on the team are just mercenaries.
Yep.
Right? Hired soldiers. They're here because of the paycheck and they're going to try hard on the ice, but that's it. I think fans
and sometimes not even that.
Right. I think fans want to know that these guys actually care about the fan base, that they care about planting roots in this city. And I understand that the NHL is a business and teams are ruthless. They have to make tough decisions. You don't get to stay in one franchise forever. But while you're here, what kind of impacts can you make? That's critical. And if you don't want to abide by that standard that the Sedins set, then let's be honest, it's the start of a rebuild. You don't need to be here. You don't need to be a Vancouver Canuck.
See you the frick later. Like, that is absolutely the vibe I got from today's presser too, is that it's like, yeah, if you're not, this is what we're doing. This is our standard. If you don't want to be a part of it, we'll happily find other accommodations for you.
Like, you're starting from scratch. And I actually think that's like as tough a hand as this management group has in building this team back up. And we're absolutely going to have to talk about that as well. One of the only silver linings is you're not bound or tied to anything. There isn't a star player that you need to appease that, oh, this guy's untouchable. And so our rebuild or retool has to match this player's timeline, or this player is so good on the ice that we have to turn a side eye to the way he treats other people in the locker room. None of that exists. No one is bigger than the organization right now. There is no untouchable on this team. So if you don't want to abide by this culture that you're trying to set, then like you said, see you later. And I think that's important, because if you can lay the groundwork right now, then that means year 2, year 3, year 4 of the rebuild, by the time you're integrating some of your prospects and young players into the organization, hopefully that culture is already starting to be established by the likes of Zeev Buium and Tom Verlander and Liam Ogren, who have already seemed to embrace that kind of mentality and enthusiasm down the stretch of last season.
Absolutely. Like, if you're not going to show up to a team dinner, you're off the team. Like, unless you have a great reason for it, of course. But like, if your teammates are putting on a team dinner and you just no-show it, yeah, like that would be it. Like, I don't care. Well, I care a little bit what you're doing on the ice, but this is how you build the culture. And this is something that they harped on so many times. We're going to get to RJ because he had some really good quotes on this stuff as well. Jacob, RJ with no timeline on the rebuild. That's our next clip that we're going to play here. I believe, and I apologize if I'm wrong, but I believe this clip will include the part where he talked about how it's so much less about wins and losses, and it's so much more about how, however long it takes for us to build a culture that starts to constitute winning, that's when we can accelerate. Let's play the clip.
I think to put any type of timeline on it is unfair to the process. I think it's more about building the environment first, is making sure that the staples are there, the things that we believe in, creating an environment where a safe environment where players can improve, can make mistakes, that have resources. But we're going to do this step by step, and we're not going to race through it. We're going to be very strategic with everything we do. We're going to be aligned with everything we do, so that we know, as a group, we are sticking to the vision that was talked about in May of 2026, and not ever get outside of that vision. And I think if we stick to that, we do it correctly, and we have the right people, the right leadership, and the right environment here consistently every day, there's no doubt in our minds that we will take the steps to get to where we want to go.
What did you think of that?
Great answer. Not putting a timeline on it. Important, because with the rebuild, it is impossible to try and predict how long it's going to take. A lot of it is, or not a lot of it, but some of a rebuild success is also luck based, right? And we focus so much about what management groups can control, and we will almost look at executives from a lens of, like, Matthew Darche, for example. Matthew Darche takes over as GM there. They all shoot up and win the Matthew Schaefer lottery. And all of a sudden it's, whoa, look at the work Matthew Darche has done. And I'm not saying that Matthew Darche hasn't done good things, but there's a massive element of luck, especially because the Islanders didn't even finish near the bottom of the standings, that you got the opportunity to draft Matthew Schaefer, who could potentially be a generational NHL defenseman. Same thing with the San Jose Sharks, right? One of the most exciting young teams in the league as far as their trajectory and their future over the next handful of years. There was luck involved in that, in getting Macklin Celebrini. And it's not to say that you can't have success if you don't end up being lucky, but like, you look at the Anaheim Ducks, they haven't had a number one pick. They're still in the second round of the playoffs and have a bright young future. Important, but then that might mean it takes a little bit longer, as opposed to if next year the hockey gods somehow take a break on this market and bless you with Landon Dupont. Okay, maybe the process does speed up a little bit because of how quickly a player like that could transform your organization. So I like that part. I like that he mentioned step by step, being very strategic and not getting sidetracked, right? You would hope that what I mentioned earlier about the middle phase of the rebuild is where a lot of organizations get lost. They get excited about, all right, we improved a little bit in the standings. Can we take, and we have some young talent, can we take that next step next season and immediately try to race back into the playoffs? You would hope, based on what RJ is saying today, that they don't get sidetracked, that they remain very strategic, as he said.
All right, more from RJ. Two more that I really want to get to. Well, three more. We'll do two more from RJ, then we'll get to all three guys talking about Elias Pettersson. Jacob, can we please have RJ answering a question from Farhan about making tough decisions? Okay, before we play it, RJ says a few times that there's a narrative out there that he can't make tough decisions. I feel like we've never really talked about that. I haven't seen that a ton. Maybe it's something that other people are talking about. But apparently it's out there, and RJ was very, very defensive, and also not just like, no, I'm not. Gave a really thoughtful answer, and that's why I want to play it.
I think it's a little bit of a false narrative of the people that work directly with me in contact every day. I think one thing I do is create a space in between that eventually I've got to let people know that I don't want them to perform well because it looks good on me. I want them to perform well because I have their best interest. And then it allows me to create a safe space of conversation. So you can talk to players or coaches or trainers or staff that I've had a lot of difficult conversations with, and some hard, honest conversations. But just because I'm an in the fire manager or doesn't mean that it's micromanaging or that I like being around it. It creates a space for you then to make those difficult decisions and to be able to say, we talked about this, I'm moving you out because you didn't understand. So I think it's a false narrative because I'm empathetic that I can't make tough decisions, but people that work alongside me know that's far from the truth.
And hey, when we used to talk about RJ, and when I say we, I mean Chris and I, it was the quote, he either gave it to me or Chris. It was a long time ago, but he talked about how he doesn't like to just meet with prospects over Zoom or whatever, and he wants to go because the quote he gave was, I want to see the white of a man's eyes. And it was like, whoa, dude, all right. Okay, no problem. Like, he's always come across to me as a super intense guy. Like, I don't think RJ's some big softy that isn't capable of firing people. I don't think so.
Oh, look at the look at the thumbnail of this episode. I grabbed a screenshot from when they held the jerseys up at the start of the press conference. RJ's got the death stare going. He was like, the Sedins are smiling. Francesco's got his big grin, teeth showing, and RJ's just staring daggers through the camera.
I took so many photos. I'm trying to see if I have one of him smiling. No, yeah, well, that's kind of a smile.
And it's funny. I found a few photos of him smiling after he won the Calder Cup with Abbotsford, there was photos of him at the rally smiling. Those are the only photos I've ever seen of him smiling. He seems the narrative that he's not cutthroat enough is just, it seems so funny to hear that, because every photo you see of this guy, he looks insanely intense. He looks like he's trying to intimidate people.
All right, Harm. Thank you, Jacob. You're right. I appreciate that. Harm, did you have anything from that clip that you wanted to talk about from RJ? Because I have one more, and it's about Adam Foote.
Not much. I don't think it's a widespread narrative that he isn't cutthroat enough, but also you look at Kirk Conroy, right? That's an executive, a GM, where there was maybe more of a narrative that he's the nicest guy you'll ever meet. Is he going to be able to make the tough decisions? And he's made a lot of tough decisions, right? He's traded Kadri, Uyghur. I believe he traded Hanifin, Tanev. He blew up that previous core, Markstrom, which was a tough, messy situation because of the control that he had. And there was a back and forth about the exact timeline. I don't think people should mistake empathy and kindness for weakness.
Absolutely. And that's what RJ was saying there. All right. Adam Foote was the topic of the press conference. RJ was asked about Adam Foote, and basically I'm going to sum it up. You're going to hear the clip, but to me, this just sounds a lot like, yeah, he's going to be the coach in October. Adam Foote's going to be the coach to start the season, but this is what RJ had to say.
If you look at last year as a whole, it's really tough to evaluate a coach or anyone with all the adversity of the injuries, the goaltending, everything that went on. There were so many variables that changed the course of the season. Obviously, there was some drama around the group. To evaluate Adam just on that is unfair. We're just, this is day one on the job. We're going to talk about things as we will top to bottom in the organization, areas that we can improve. But that's going to take us some time to sit. So to evaluate based off of last season, I think is pretty unfair.
Do you agree with me, Harm? He's the coach in October?
I would not jump so quick to that conclusion. It's possible, but I'll take people back to John Chaiko's original press conference when he was asked about Greg Berube's future. And this is a story from Yahoo Sports. When asked on Monday about the head coach's future with the team, Chaika called Berube a, quote, tremendous coach, adding that the two had spoken briefly on Sunday night. Chaika said, quote, he's a guy that's a respected leader for over decades in the National Hockey League. He's a Stanley Cup coach and good person. We had a good conversation. He was later asked directly if he's open to bringing Berube back. Chaika quickly responded, yes, of course. The Leafs have since fired Craig Berube. So
yeah, I've heard Chaika's a con man, slime ball, whatever else Steve Simmons called him.
The point being, I didn't expect day one on the job that RJ was going to come up to the podium and say, either way, yes, Adam Foote is back, or no, we're gassing Adam Foote. So yeah, it's a possibility that he's back for the start of next season, but especially when you look at literally what happened with John Chaika, and a lot of Leafs media were interpreting his response to mean that Berube is more likely to be back than not. I'd be careful about reading too quickly into that.
Fair enough. I just think with the level of, it's tough to evaluate on last season. What I could absolutely see is you start the season with Adam Foote. Manny Malhotra is still signed to be Abbotsford's head coach next year. I'm not saying there's some handshake agreement that, oh, you're definitely getting promoted, but there might be an idea that, hey, we don't know when it's going to be, but like you will be this team's next head coach now that RJ is in place. And I don't know if that's the case. That's the case. And hey, the Leafs are probably going to come calling and they're going to be able to offer Manny Malhotra a lot of money. So we'll see, but we'll see how that plays out through the rest of the offseason. Okay, last thing from RJ, and then we're going to get the Sedin's thoughts on this as well. Elias Pettersson became a topic of conversation. This was RJ talking about Elias Pettersson, and the quote that stands out, wiping away expectations for Elias Pettersson.
My initial thought on Elias is I want to wipe away all the expectations and all that may exist in him. Just like the rest of our hockey club, not just our players, but our staff, is we're asking them to come September the most prepared that they could be. And for our players, that's going to be physically and mentally ready to make a decision. So it's to jump to any conclusion, but no, I'm looking forward to talking to him and just letting him know that that's what's important to me out of the gates. And like I just said, and I'll reiterate again, I'm going to challenge these guys to be as good as the teammates that they can for each other. And if we commit to those little things, everybody's going to be better for it, him included.
All right, Tillo in the chat said, I heard white boy instead of wipe away. Did you not also hear that? I heard, I want everybody to be a white boy. And I was like, whoa, RJ, don't say that, dude. I don't think that's the management style you want to be taking here. I did. I genuinely heard white boy. I was waiting for one other person to say it before I said, did anyone else hear this? But yeah, obviously someone else did. I heard white boy at first. Anyways, that clip.
At least he's good on that front, hey?
That clip specifically, Harm, what did you think of what he had to say about Elias Pettersson?
I like the concept of if Pettersson is going to come back, you have to, and it's difficult because there's so much baggage, there's so much history. But if he's back to the best of your ability, you have to kind of treat it as this is a new slate. And let's leave what happened behind in the past. Let's not set expectations that we desperately need you to be a 90-point player next year. But the second part about that, I think, was even more important, that RJ is going to challenge every player on this team to show up to September as prepared as possible. And how often from multiple leaders have we heard preparation as a theme of Elias Pettersson's preparation needs to be better?
Yep.
And I think in determining his future, and it's going to need to be a collaborative decision because he has a full no movement clause and the team obviously has some say as well. They're going that initial conversation is going to, in my opinion, be critical in determining what direction are you going to go, because it's not going to be as simple as RJ walking in, the Sedins walking in and saying, yeah, we're going to wipe away the slate, which I think is an empathetic way of approaching it, and just no expectations. That means just show up to September like you normally do. It's no, we're going to wipe away expectations for like on ice production and statistics. But there's a standard here of preparation, of being an excellent teammate, of a locker room impact, of culture, that if you're going to be the highest paid player on this team, we don't care about whether you live up to being an 80 to 90 point player on the ice, but you better represent all of this organization's core values if you're going to be the highest paid player on the team. And those are all things you can control, right? Sure, you can't control how many points you're going to put up directly, but you can control all the other elements, your work ethic, the example you set for your younger players. Are you a valuable mentor? And that's going to need to be an honest and hard conversation about, can you live up to those standards? And are we at a point now where both sides can buy into that? And if so, great. See you in September. Let's build from scratch. If not, then I think there are going to be conversations about exploring the idea of a fresh start for both sides.
And this idea that, oh, we're worried about how the fan base is going to react if we sell Elias Pettersson for pennies on the dollar. If they sell Elias Pettersson for whatever, I don't know, 3rd round pick, 4th round pick, I don't care. Okay. For my hypothetical, if they have to make that trade, and Henrik Sedin and Daniel, I don't know who's going to talk, if both of them or whoever, any of those 3 guys comes out to the podium and says, yeah, this is a difficult day for our organization. This was why we did this. And it's for the reasons that you just laid out of, we have a standard that we're trying to set for our culture. He wasn't willing to meet it, and we decided we had to move on. You think there's going to be people in the fan base who are like, no, what? No, come on. Like, if you lay it out like that, just like, this is what we were asking. We gave him time. He didn't do it. That white boy had to go. People are gonna empathize with that, and people are going to understand your thought process, and that is going to help people buy in to a vision, which is literally what you're going to have to do. As you kind of sell the future here, is you're going to have to sell your vision. It's not going to be wins and losses. It's going to be what these guys talked about as well, of we are going to put a team on that is going to compete every single night. This idea of, yeah, we'll take a couple nights off when things get difficult. That's not going to be there. And that's what people really want to see. There was a comment from Nick Pochek. Where'd it go? Another good comment. He said, there's a lot of comments today. We appreciate everybody in the chat. I got to scroll way up for it. Damn it, where'd it go? Something about the 80s. He said, I was a fan all through the 80s, and I watched a team that lost a lot of games, but always put in a strong effort each and every night. That's what you want to see. That's what you want to see from this group. Okay, we're running a little long. This is Daniel and Henrik. Awesome that they just talk. They both answer the questions in succession. They don't even need to split them up. This is Daniel and Henrik Sedin talking about Elias Pettersson as well.
I mean, we've been through this as players. Exactly what it's been through. You're going to have some really good seasons. You're going to have some tougher seasons. What we found after a long career, looking back, is that the best seasons we had, we were well prepared. To RJ's point, that is everything you can control. It's how hard you work in the summer. Mentally, you're ready to go when training camp hits. So I think that's the one message to him is preparation. And like I said, we had some bad seasons too, and we those times we maybe didn't prepare the way we should have.
That was just Daniel. And I think the thing at the end stands out the most is the times that they had good seasons, they were prepared the best, right? That's what stands out. All right. I'm going through my notes here. Do we have RJ talking about the real hope from the final 15 to 20 games, Jacob? Everybody competing. Do we have that clip?
I don't think so. But again, it might be here under one of these other
Take your time.
titles.
Take your time.
Here. I don't think we have that one.
That's okay.
No.
Everything's going to be up on CanucksArmy.com. A lot of people have already watched the presser as well, but that was just another one that stood out to me. You don't need to hear the actual quote, but it was Daniel, it was Henrik, and it was RJ talking about that final 15 to 20 games and everyone came together. And again, there's this idea that's been prevalent throughout that, hey, the locker room issues are all fixed because things were great at the end of the season. This is going to be a long process. And I think you gain confidence because I was pouring cold water on this. I think last week we were talking about it. And I just said, like, let's not be so sure that everything's fixed, right? Like, let's not just be so sure that, yeah, nothing's ever going to be bad ever again because Zeev Buium had some great quotes to Tyson Cole. And he did. But this gives me a lot more confidence that those can be put in the rearview mirror. And if things get off track a little bit, that these guys are going to be right on top of it. That gives me some hope. Anything on that, Harm? Or can I jump to everybody's favorite clip? And that's the one about the practice facility.
Well, I think broadly speaking, there is obviously a lot of confidence that, okay, they're going to clean up some of the culture issues, and all of that is great. But I do also think, and this isn't meant to be a criticism or just an observation, it's day one for them on the job, so I understand. But I would also say the overall messaging was great, but it was still light on specifics. We didn't really get a clear answer on, and I asked the question near the end of how many changes can we expect with the rest of the hockey operations staff. And RJ mentioned a little bit that they'll be looking to add some people, but maybe not subtracting. So that's a little ambiguous. That's a little bit vague. And that's important to me because when you look at the challenge that the Canucks face with this rebuild, it's not culture alone. Culture is essential to winning, but that alone isn't going to take you from 32nd place in the NHL to a Stanley Cup contender in 6 years.
Yep.
Right? There are so many, like, it's really hard to rebuild from scratch, which is essentially what the Canucks are trying to do. You're going to need some luck along the way. You're going to, even just the question I posed at the very end, where a staple for rebuilding teams like Montreal and Chicago in the flat cap era was, let's take on first and second round picks by accepting other teams' bad contracts. And they were freebies. You look at Montreal, they received the first round pick from Calgary to take that Sean Monahan contract. They rehabbed his value and then flipped him at the deadline to Winnipeg for another first round pick. They created 2 first round picks out of thin air. And that then creates a kind of organizational surplus where, okay, we're actually at a phase now where we're supposed to accelerate. We want to go out and get Noah Dobson. Guess what? We can't actually justify giving up 2 first-round picks for Noah Dobson, a player that fits the age of our core. In a rising cap world, though, those freebies, yes, you can still take bad contracts on. And I was encouraged by RJ saying that they're going to look at every opportunity to acquire extra draft picks.
And they have full support from ownership to do whatever they want, is what Henrik said. Continue.
And that's important. But last offseason, Pittsburgh was the only team that got significant futures for taking on bad contracts. It was 2 second-round picks in separate trades, one for Matt Dumba. I think the other involved Connor Clifton with Buffalo. Like, it's hard. It's a lot harder to do that. And then you add on the fact that the veterans you would potentially look to sell off, whether it's an Elias Pettersson, a Jake DeBrusk, or Brock Besser, their contracts and partial or full no movement clauses, it significantly restrains the value that you're going to get back if you move off some of those players. And it's not to say, oh, don't make those trades because they aren't worth anything, but it's just to say, if you're trying to build through the draft, which you 100% should be trying to do, RJ said they're looking to do it that way, how do you actually go and get these extra first and second round picks so that, you know, a team like Chicago, for example, yeah, they're 31st place in the NHL, but they, like, again, you look at the number of first and second round picks they've made over the last 5 years, it's pretty insane. And they already have Connor Bedard on the roster. And we don't even look at Chicago as a team that is necessarily a model rebuild or they're on the cusp of arriving. You look at the Calgary Flames, and again, they have been rebuilding for a lot longer. So it makes sense that they've had a cluster, a ton of draft picks and prospects accumulated, but they had assets like Noah Hannafin and Chris Tanev and Nazem Kadri and Rasmus Anderson and Mackenzie Weegar that teams actually wanted and were willing to pay premium assets for. The Canucks don't quite have that same advantage. And so how do you find that competitive edge? You're going to need culture is essential. I love hearing that messaging, but this is a really tough job that RJ and the Sedins are stepping into. And I think we didn't necessarily hear a lot of specifics about how are we going to find that edge. And that's okay. Again, I don't mean that as a criticism. I just want to see the actions in the coming months.
Hey, and speaking of that, one question I wanted to ask, didn't get it in. Plan on naming a captain next year? The last guy, Jim Rutherford, was all excited about, oh my gosh, Filip Hronek checks all the boxes. He's on a very, very short list to be our next captain. Do these guys want to name a captain from this group? That's going to be one question. Again, I wanted to ask it today. I did not get the opportunity to, but we will see. We will see if we're able to get that question. And again, heading into training camp, we'll have an idea of what the Canucks plan to do in that department. But again, the reason I bring that up is you brought up you don't have a ton of valuable trade chips. I could think of one. Yeah, he's got a no movement clause, but I could think of one.
By far the most valuable one and an important decision for the rebuild.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to the last clip. Then we're going to hit our poll question. Then we're going to do a quick anyone else. The last question. We all knew it was coming. I don't know if the clip includes the lead up, but PJ asked the question. Patrick Johnson asked the question and said, called it Jim Rutherford's favorite question. This is Henrik Sedin stepping up and answering the question about the practice facility.
I'll answer. No, I think it's very close to having a deal done, and we're super excited to see it happening. I think it's going to help the community a big time as well. So we're getting there. We're getting close. So that's the answer I'm going to get.
Not a huge answer to dive into, but just funny that Henrik has now anointed himself as the guy who's going to have to answer practice facility questions. Because that's how PJ put it too. He said, like, whichever one of you answers it is going to be the one that gets it from here on out. And that's why Henrik laughed at the start of that clip. Okay, let's get to our poll question. We've got results from YouTube. We've got results from Twitter. No sponsor attached to this one, but I'll just tell everybody before we get to our poll question about Daily Faceoff and how it's your all access pass to the playoffs. Shows, stats, fantasy insights, live social updates if it's happening. They've got it. Every goal, every hit, every moment, they break it down for you. Check out Daily Faceoff on YouTube and dailyfaceoff.com for all your playoff coverage needs. All right, poll question. Let's get the results. Let's do Twitter first, then we'll do YouTube. Our poll question today, how do you feel after hearing Henrik Daniel and Ryan Johnson speak at today's press conference? More confident, less confident, and I'm unchanged. 84.2% say more confident, 3.5% say less confident, and 12.3% say unchanged. On YouTube, we asked the same question. It was more confident, said 74%, unchanged, 22%, and less confident, 4%. So people, for the most part, more confident after hearing these guys speak. It's like you said, Harm. Lots of good stuff was said today. Now, let's see some action. Let's get to anyone else, get our chat's response as well. Everybody, get your thoughts in. We're just going to be reading from the chat. We've gone through every clip. We've given a lot of our thoughts. As long as the chat's coming, we'll keep reading some questions here and reading some thoughts as well. Anyone else is a presentation of our friends over at the Vancouver Canadians who are hosting the Everett Aqua Sox this week. There's a nooner at the Nat on Friday. Saturday, you've got a 105 start. Sunday, you've got a 105 start as well. Opening very soon, in just a few weeks, on June 1st, is the new rooftop patio. Also new at the Nat this season as they celebrate 75 years. A triple O's on the concourse. It's always a great time at the Nat. Head on down. Get your tickets now. Call 604-872-5232 or check out CanadiansBaseball.com. All right. Couple questions here. Spending to the cap. There's some confusion of why we're talking about spending to the cap. And the reason isn't because we want the Canucks to improve in free agency. The reason is you want to have guys that you're going to be able to sell off. So again, when I say go get free agents, I'm talking about ones that are going to have a ton of trade value down the road, right? I'm talking about right shot defensemen. I'm talking about bottom six centers with a ton of size, right? And Drance has been harping on this as well, this idea, and Drance is more so talking not so much about the player profiles, I don't think, but more so about overspending for those guys because you've got this cap space. What else are you going to spend it on? And also make it so that in an environment where every team is getting more and more comfortable, in an environment where every team isn't going to have to make tough decisions on player personnel because they're cap strapped, you want to put some pressure on those teams to really have to buck up to get the guys that they want. You want to cause inflation in the NHL.
Yeah, and critically, it's overspending on the cap and not the term. Term is what kills you on contracts.
Yeah.
Right? If it's you're going to have to go 4, 5, 6 years on some of these free agents, no. Like, that's just a non-starter. You don't want to have the sign your equivalent of the Louis Eriksson contract. That's important. Yep. But the idea of kind of like what Chicago did to some degree with some of their free agents, giving players an inflated AAV, but okay, it's a 2-year contract, for example. Like that absolutely makes sense to me. I don't necessarily need to see this team spend to the cap during this rebuilding era. I don't care about that, but I at least want to know that, for example, when it comes to the idea of even taking on a bad contract, and again, it's not going to be as readily available. The prices teams are willing to pay aren't going to be as high, but those opportunities could still be out there in some capacity where, okay, is a team willing to give you a 3rd round pick for a bad contract? That player maybe has 2 years left on his deal. You think you can put him in a bigger role, resuscitate his value, and then flip him for a better draft pick as a deadline rental in the future. Is ownership going to look at, well, we're only getting a 3rd round pick. Should we be spending not even the cap space, but the real cash on this player at a time when we're rebuilding and our revenue isn't necessarily firing at the best rate? So it mattered to me. I just want to get a sense that this management group has the full flexibility to take on whatever contracts they want for the betterment of extracting future value. But I don't need to see when you pull up their Puckpedia that, oh, they're right up at the ceiling year in and year out at the start of this rebuild.
Totally. But like Ryan Strome for a 7th. Calgary just did that You think they're going to trade him for, I don't know, a third, a second, maybe at next year's deadline? Probably. And that's just value that they just bought. They just bought that value themselves. Zach Whitecloud, again, a guy who's fit in really well in Calgary and is loved in Calgary, but absolutely could be in the cards as a guy that they trade for another second. I don't want to say first, second, third round pick. Like, that matters when you just take on that and you create value for yourself by doing that. And that's Calgary. Like, the Canucks can do better than Calgary when it comes to revenue. My goodness. Okay, some questions, some comments from the chat. This one from Jordan Bainbridge. He said, she said, all I know is the presser reminded me how effing much I miss hearing the Sedins talk about the Canucks. That's a great comment. Walk with a good one. If there was a GM/president of hockey ops Hunger Games, are the Canucks now the overwhelming favorites? We always talked about this. If like the coaching staffs had to play a 3-on-3 game, when you had Talkett, Foote, and Sergei Gonchar on the same staff, like they're beating every coaching staff around the league. I think this is true as well about the GMs and the president of hockey operations, plural, as well. Another comment here. We'll throw this one to you, Harm. It's from Rajcraft. He said, do you have any concerns of all three guys coming from player development as management? They didn't mention areas they needed to add people to what would be their weaknesses.
I wouldn't say concern, but again, it was light on specifics. That's kind of what I meant, right?
Yeah.
Is we didn't hear, like we heard vaguely RJ saying at the end when I asked about building out the rest of the front office and what type of profile would you be looking for? It wasn't a specific, we're looking to bolster our analytics department or invest a lot more resources specifically in player development. It was more of a vague, like he went deep on the qualities he's looking for, but they didn't give any kind of clue on, that's the department they're trying to really fix or take to the next level. And again, this is where we're going to have to see their actions. I'm not going to criticize them for being vague about it today, but that remains an open question. And it's partly why I said, I love all the messaging about culture, and overall it was critical that they didn't step on any landmines in that press conference, and the open-ended nature of the timeline, and importantly, talking about taking it slow through this committed rebuild. I liked a lot of the messaging, but it is still an exceptionally difficult task at hand, and we don't have this super clear-eyed view on what their exact blueprint and methodology is going to look like.
Yen in the chat said, I would love to see something like going after Dougie Hamilton out of New Jersey. Canucks can get creative here. We're going to have a long off season to talk about this. Okay. Another one. This one from Spatzilli. I'll answer this one first, from Grow Catnip in the chat, who said, moving forward, how do you think they should deal with the goaltending situation? I think that's going to be a really interesting conversation. I've said this for a while. You got to carry 3 goalies. You have to carry 3 goalies. You can't bank on Thatcher Demko's health. I've said it before. Say it again. Okay, this one. And we're going to have to wrap here pretty quick because we both have to go right. JC Plummer said, why did the Canucks cut the press conference before you had the chance to ask your questions? The Canucks didn't it go like 40 minutes in the end?
Yeah.
It was a long press conference. Like, I get it. Like, sometimes, we heard Jim Rutherford once before say no, I don't want this cut. They have questions. I want to answer questions. And that was, a few years ago. But I'm not holding it against the Canucks that the press conference was cut a little bit short. I wouldn't even call it a short press conference. Anyways, okay. This comment from Spatzilli, we will close on this one. Do you think the Twins/RJ will be more successful traders than the traders than the previous regime? This is an interesting one. I liked what I heard from, I think it was Henrik. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it was Henrik talking about how, again, when you have that good culture, when you trade for guys, you often get better results than you're expecting from them.
Let's call a spade a spade. We don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and act like we have the evidence. What evidence does anybody have for, the Sedins and Ryan Johnson are going to perform well or poorly in making some of these trades? Certainly, I think RJ has made some sharp bets. and bringing guys to Abbotsford and developing them, and a couple under the radar finds. Like, that's encouraging. But to sit here today, there is no evidence of them sitting at the top of a hockey operations food chain and making decisions on an NHL roster.
Yep.
There's none. And without evidence, sure, you can try and make observations or pick up on the things they say, but we don't know. Like, that's the honest truth.
How good are they at fantasy football? Poker players. We're going to get Max Lapierre as soon as we can. He's so busy with the Habs right now. But he quote tweeted something about the Sedins and said, now they will win, period. Trust me, period. And if you haven't listened to our interviews, we've had 2 of them recently with Max Lapierre, of course, ex-teammate of the Sedins. He spoke very highly of the idea of bringing those guys in some sort of leadership role. And that's what the Canucks have done here today. Very last one, I promise. We told Andy we'd get to his comment. He said, I'm tired of ownership treating its loyal fans like idiots. No conversation of how analytics will be used, scouting, nothing, just buzzwords. Understand the frustrations. I think further what you're saying, Harm, like, give them more of a chance. This isn't going to be this isn't going to be the last time we hear from these guys. These guys are going to answer questions, and especially when it comes to how they're going to use analytics, what they're going to do with their front office, what AGMs are going to bring in. A lot of those questions are going to be answered in their actions in really the next couple of weeks, the next few months. We're going to get a lot of answers to some of these questions. So again, I understand the frustration. And Andy, again, talking about how it doesn't sound like they're going to spend to the cap, but our tickets are going to cost the same. Yeah. And again, understand the frustrations, but let's give these guys a chance. Hopeful after the press conference, like we've been saying really from the start, and really about the organization for a while now, is it only is going to matter how they act and what they do next. Harm, anything else you want to get to before the Bet365 bet of the day?
Nope.
Okay, Bet365 bet of the day. Francesco Aquilini to speak in before you and I turn 30 years old. I'm setting it at plus 1,000. You taking it?
4 years.
4 years.
Man.
I turned 30 in February 2030.
What's the implied percentage chance of a plus 1,000?
I don't know.
Line.
I don't know.
Like, because plus 1,000, I'm like, yeah, those are long odds, but I don't know.
Okay,
exactly
10%,
how long.
10%.
10%? I might take it. It's 4 years.
I'm taking it. I think he'll do it.
I think he'll do it.
Yeah.
Now, if you said within the next 6 months in reference to
the sooner rather than later comment,
yeah, then I don't know if I'm taking that, but
all right. Okay. Our actual Bet365. Our actual Bet365 bet of the day. NHL playoff action. Let's hit the ice. Let's go to the ice. I've been saying let's go to the hardwood a lot. Let's go to the ice tonight. The Montreal Canadiens are taking on the Buffalo Sabres. The Habs are road underdogs tonight. You can get Habs money line at minus 105 odds. Buffalo, the favorite, at minus 115. That is what we're taking. That is our bet of the day. It is brought to you by Bet365. If you're tired of waiting for the end of the game to get paid, you're ready to move on to the next puck drop. That's why Bet365, an official partner of the NHL, has 3-goal early payout. If the team you're riding goes up 3 goals at any point in the game, they'll pay your bet out early. Hockey moves fast. Now, a 3-goal early payout, there's one less thing you have to wait around for. Bet365, download the app and see what early payouts all about. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. All right, folks, thank you so much to everybody who joined us. Thank you to everybody who listened to us on podcast. We'll be back tomorrow. We're going to play Family Feud on Friday. Get your survey responses in. Still need some. So hit us up on the survey response. We'll play Family Feud tomorrow. But we will close it out there. For my co-host Harmon Dial and our technical producer Jacob Lazar, my name is Dave Guajelli. Thank you so much to an episode of Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.